Monolith is here and everyone is trying tons of new builds and playstyles, trying to find out what works and what doesn't. Here's a fun fact though, I've been playing Monolith for almost 2 weeks. Epic was kind enough to provide many community members, from competitive players to creators like myself, with a chance to try out Monolith before they released it. So coming into the Monolith release with a bit of a head start gave me a chance to see how players reacted to the new map and the meta without being surprised and invested in that same way. But damn dude, it's really cool to see everyone trying so much and trying new things. But while that's going on, I think it'd be a good idea for me to share my thoughts on the river buffs. Everyone was really up in arms since they were first announced, mostly about the stealth buff and how it might be unfair or broken and so on. But since I've been playing Monolith for a bit longer than most, I feel I have a better grasp on which is the weakest and strongest of the buffs. And of course their uses too. So let's dive right in. Starting from the worst to best, it's the river buffs. Number 4 at the bottom of the list might surprise you. It's Red Buff. Red Buff provides you with increased damage on your abilities for its duration, which comes across as awesome, and honestly, it's pretty good. For your bursters like Gadget or Gideon, this should be your dream buff, but weirdly, it's actually not. Red is really useful. In fact, all of the buffs are. You know, the mana rewarded that every river buff gives makes them all worth grabbing, no matter which buff it actually is. But in the case of Red, the damage increase isn't enough when you compare it to the value that you get out of the other buffs during the early and mid game, which sets the pace and tone for the late game. But despite that, Red does give you a clear way to increase your damage and is of course best placed on casters who can really put out ability damage. And with Red, it could lead the numbers in your favor when you really need it. But even so, you could be doing more with all of the other buffs. However, here's a bit of information to throw you off. In the late game, Red is probably number 1 on this list. When things start to scale, Red puts out an insane amount of damage when on your casters. But it also works on your carries too. Weird, right? Twin Blast, Murdoch, and Grimex, their Q does so much damage when you've got Red. It's scary in the late game. But then think about their ultimates as well. It becomes a nightmare when they've got Red in that late game. Red might be the least wanted buff through most of the game, especially in early and mid game. But damn, it still has its uses, especially in late game. Next up, number 3, we have the blue buff. Blue buff is generally always a treat. The bonus movement speed is fantastic, and with travel mode gone, all move speed increases have become massively useful. You can catch almost everyone when you've got blue, and you can certainly escape tons of situations too. Hell, when you're ganking in the early game, that movement speed is so good. You can run straight past their wards, even though they know you're coming, you can still get to them before they can really react because you're moving so fast. But yes, there is some weaknesses to blue, and that's that it doesn't provide you with an advantage directly. Hey, it'll get you there, right? But it won't make you much more of a threat in like a slugfest fight where both parties are committed to the fight. You could even argue that Red buff could be more useful in that specific situation because it will in fact give you a damage advantage, be it slight. However, even in teamfight situations where you want the extra damage, the bonus movement speed can be key, allowing you to dodge abilities, even ultimates, thanks to how fast you're moving. If you want to get out of a bad situation, you can with blue. And if you want to catch someone and keep pressing on, you certainly can. Which is why it kind of shines over Red in the early and maybe mid game before everyone gets too deep into their builds. Number 2, I wonder if people will be surprised on this one. Number 2 is purple, the stealth buff. The stealth is god tier, providing every character in the game with a way to enter the shadow plane, revealing wards and of course providing surprise attacks in a whole new way. The majority of characters found in Paragon would be broken with the ability to go into stealth, and damn, they certainly are when you grab this purple. It's a jungler's dream to pick this buff up, even late game. The power of stealth is obvious, it makes ganking much easier, and you can reveal where their enemy wards are, like I said, which is useful. But on top of that, you can walk into the enemy jungle with a feeling of complete safety. It's something else. With the information you gain from checking out the enemy jungle, you can work out where their jungler actually is if they're not there at that time. And maybe you can steal green buff or even 5-stack camps and dip on out. My favorite thing to do in the early and mid game is to grab the stealth buff and pop into the enemy jungle and learn what's going on in the jungle, where he's cleared, where he is, and where he might be. Then, now I've gained that information, continue on to a gank, whether it's in mid or a side lane, if I didn't just see their jungler who's a free kill. Then in the late game, purple is still so damn good. Sure, by that stage, there's going to be a lot more vision and wards on the map, which might give the enemy a way to catch you out, But if you're able to grab it and move quick, you can still catch people off guard with ease in the late game. And in the late game, catching that carry or the support before the real fight can give you a huge advantage. It's just getting a pick and then providing you with a way to go take Prime and maybe win the game. Or even just make a push that they can't defend because they don't have the numbers anymore. Because of purple being in the game, you have to always be on the lookout. Purple is deadly. So why isn't it number 1 then? Well, black is insane. Number 1, the top dog, is black buff. Black buff deals damage to target over time, and as the game progresses, the damage of black increases too, to silly levels. You can use black buff to give you a clear advantage in a fight, similar to how red was used back in Legacy. It's a serious amount of damage. In a team fight, you have a clear advantage because of its damage, more so if you can tag multiple people, almost like the way you would use Tainted Magic. But clearing jungle becomes super fast with black because the dot works on minions, right? You can kill your green buff with ease, you can kill the white camps with ease, and what about the enemy jungle? You can go in there and steal from them, and it's never been so easy. And then there's the raptors too. By now, you should all know how deadly these things can be, but with black, you can burn these bad boys down way quicker, and the value of raptors cannot be understated. They give 1000 CP per raptor, and Prime gives 1200. And you can kill many raptors throughout the game, and thanks to black, it'll become much easier. And don't forget, you can even use it to steal the enemy's gold buff in a mere moment in the mid and early game. The carries are constantly using gold buff to keep their CXP going, increase how fast they farm, and trying to snowball out of control using it. If you can deny the enemy carry of their gold buff, then you can deny them of so much CXP while even gaining more yourself, because of course you'll have gold buff. And yes, it even works on Prime. That is value. So black is useful in teamfights, it's useful in ganks, it's useful in jungle or enemy jungle invasions, it's good offensively, it's good defensively, it can even help you kill Prime with more haste. The point is, black is always good, whereas purple is really useful most of the time, and blue is really useful most of the time. Red kind of being the weakest in the early game, and arguably the best in the late game, which is why black stands above the rest in my eyes. But outside of which is best in which situation, or who wants the specific buff over others, all of the river buffs are useful. They all make an impact that gives you a clear advantage, and they all reward a solid chunk of mana that cannot be understated. If you are controlling the river buffs throughout the early and mid game, or even late game, you have a clear advantage. So remember, they spawn at 3 minutes, and then every 2 minutes after that. So be ready, use them. Already be at the buff when it's about to spawn so the enemy can't get it before you do. And make sure you ward them too, whether you're trying to spot which buff it is and the timer on it. The area in front of the river buff is extremely useful because it's right next to Prime or it's right next to the mid lane. River buffs are a new important objective and a new way that you can win games. Give yourself the advantage and start using them. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you have a different opinion, that's completely fine. You know, this is ultimately my opinion on the river buffs with my experience in the game so far. And of course, remember, they're going to tweak the game. Monolith is not going to be the way it is right now in maybe a week or 2 weeks, or who knows. They might make certain buffs stronger or weaker. We don't know yet. I do hope you all managed to find the code hidden somewhere in this video for Winterfest. And don't forget, check out Hyddn's channel for your next Winterfest code found in his video today. His channel is linked in the description, so go check him out. Either way, guys, I'll see you next time.